Hello. Hello and happy Friday, everybody. Yes, hello, happy Friday, Zero, and Blue Ice Cubes, and Tia. Nice to see you all in the chat. Speaking of the chat, it's a little strange. I noticed that on stream, it seems to be scrolled up for some reason. Let's see if I can fix that. Go back to my chat widget. And here we go, chat moment of truth. I'm gonna repaste the URL in. Okay, yes, and we have fixed it there, just like that. See, now everything is just the way it needs to be. So yes, howdy Zero Striker, howdy Blue Ice Cubes. We finally get the truth about Axaeon. Yes, that's right. In tonight's stream, you will learn the truth about me, everything there is to know about Axaeon. You've come to the right place. Axaeon, greater times infinity, Asmongold. Oh, thank you, Tia. I will take that as quite a compliment, since Asmongold is very successful. I can't say I'm super familiar with him beyond some clips that I've seen, but I know he's watched by a lot of people, at least. So hope everyone's having a good day and a good week. Axaeon Mogs, Asmongold. Oh, wow. Thank you, Zero. You all are really too kind. Too kind with these compliments. But yes, the topic for today, male VTubers. Apparently that's been the subject of the discourse. And a lot of it does go back to Asmongold, though not all of it, as we'll see. There's a bit more of a context, a bit of a broader context that I will be talking about, though he is certainly a key portion of it. Also, Web of Concepts, welcome. Way better than the Artemis stream. Well, that's a high bar to clear. But if so, if the stream does end up being better, I'll take it. Yeah, I was watching the Artemis stream a second ago, and it sounds like some of you were as well. And yeah, just it was amazing to see that over 3 million people, I think, are watching it at once. And just, yeah, looking at those astronauts coming back, I was glad to see it looks like they made it back safely. So really quite a historic event. And I realized I bandied the time about on today's stream a little bit. First, it was going to be at 7:30, but then a student that I was meeting with earlier today moved their meeting to earlier. So I actually had time to start at my usual time of 7. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just announce that it's at 7, you know, my usual time. But then right before the stream, I saw, hey, like the Artemis thing is going on right now. Like I better push this back. And so luckily the Artemis stream was able to conclude safely. Yeah, if you haven't seen the Artemis stream, it's really cool. I posted a link early in today's chat, so you can kind of see the link to it up there if you're curious. I'm sure it's still going on. They're probably like taking the astronauts out of the capsule right now. But anyway, where was I? Oh yes, male VTubers. Back to male VTubers. So as I was seeing all of the discourse about this lately and thinking, okay, there's a lot of controversy about this, a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation. And as I was thinking about it all, suddenly it occurred to me, like, hey, I'm a male VTuber. You know, perhaps I have some things to say about this. And so I thought for a little while and I realized, oh, okay, it turns out I do. I do have some opinions I can share, some things I can say to weigh in on this debate. And so that is how this stream was born. I tell you what, chat, let's go to my office. I think it might be a little more comfortable there so we can really get settled in and talk in more detail about male VTubers. Now, really where this all began, for anybody who might have missed the announcement, is, well, actually, maybe I'll move myself down here so you can see, is that there was an announcement recently by Cover Corp, who runs HoloLive. So most people will be primarily familiar with Cover Corporation as a result of HoloLive, but of course they have their male VTubers branch called HoloStars. And recently, Cover Corporation announced some changes to their structuring of HoloStars. In particular, that there would be no more company-led activities for HoloStars. So we can see here some of the wording that they used. They write, however, the current state of HoloStars business has forced us as a company to have repeated discussions about how to maintain HoloStars in a sustainable manner. We consider the future direction of the group's activities from various perspectives. Ultimately, we have arrived at the conclusion that changing the management structure in a way that fits the current status of HoloStars activities is unavoidable. Here's where it gets a little more concrete. They write, as a result, the company-led activities of the group, which have progressed alongside the individual activities of each talent, will be coming to a close. From this fiscal year onward, activity policies will shift to mainly focus on individual activities. Moreover, as we'll reallocate certain resources, some of our support will be limited or conclude entirely. Now, just to put it in more concrete terms still, these structural changes will mainly affect, they note that it affects company-led activities and initiatives, talent streams conducted in company studios, all types of new merchandise releases, including anniversary items, and production and release of original songs, and more. So in short, for HoloStars, there will be no more company-funded concerts, merchandise, original songs, or anything of that nature. It's going to be just them streaming as individual streamers. And if they did want to do, for example, a 3D live concert or anything like that, my understanding, at least from how all this makes it sound, is that they would have to fund those initiatives themselves through their own money. Cover Corporation would not be funding anything like that. So quite the announcement, and quite a surprise to many people, I think. This announcement took them by surprise, because I know when it comes to VTubing in general, and especially VTubing in the form of agency VTubers, corporations, Cover Corporation really is the major one, with HoloLive in particular. And I think a lot of people were just thinking, okay, like, yeah, HoloStars, like, you know, they're affiliated with Cover, affiliated with HoloLive in some sense, with like occasional collaborations and so on. Like, surely HoloStars is doing well. Surely HoloStars is kind of, in a way, what you might think of as the pinnacle of, you know, being successful male VTubers. And it turns out that from this company announcement, it seems that it just was not financially sustainable, at least in the way that they were running it. And so I think that was really the start of the recent discourse about this. Some of the commentary was in response to this, as we'll see in a moment. Also, hello, Lottle14. Hi, Axaeon, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. Thank you. It's nice to see you again, Lottle. Yeah, this was pretty sad news. Yeah, I was sad to hear it too, and especially sad for the talents in Hollow Stars. T writes, Hollow Stars is criminally underrated, and the members are ridiculously talented and deserve better. I love Hololive, but I think Hollow Stars should have gotten more support, not less. Yeah, I think that that's the feeling that many or most people have about it, is like, you know, there's nothing about these guys, these streamers, that, you know, is any less talented, like, or any less deserving of success than anyone else. And it just seems like a really unfortunate situation that it's come to this for them. Gotta be honest, this was the first time I've heard of Hollow Stars, but I assume this is bad news. Yeah, I mean, definitely there's not as much in the way of, you might say, general awareness of Hollow Stars as there is of Hololive, at least among people who follow VTubers, or maybe if depending on like how closely one follows VTubers, there will be, you know, different levels of awareness of that. But some would say perhaps that's the issue, is maybe with your comment, Tia, like maybe they need more support, not less. Yeah, it's difficult to know in cases like this what the right thing to do is. I don't have much knowledge of, you know, all of the behind the scenes discussions and factors that were at play. But I do think it is sad for the Hollow Stars talents for this. Now, after this happened, some of the commentary about it was given by this man, whom some of you might know, a streamer known as Asmongold, who originally, I believe, was successful through his World of Warcraft streaming, but has since, I mean, he might still do World of Warcraft streams, I'm not sure, but at the very least, we can say that since then he has become known also as a broadly political commentator, and also just someone who gives various takes, often hot takes, on kinds of drama that are present in the streaming community. And so he had this to say about male VTubers. This was a statement of his that caused quite a bit of controversy.
You see, Hololive is going to cut support for their male VTubers. So male VTubers are over. Based? Yeah, based? So, yeah, I mean, VTubing is all about girls. It is. It's a girl thing. Now, there are guys that are VTubers, and, you know, more power to them. Good for them. But the reality is that VTubing is a female activity. VTubing is like it's like a clever use of game mechanics, like an exploit, basically, where women can stream without having to be hot. And this is a huge, huge thing, because, and I've said this before, is that if you look at the top 50 male streamers, the top 100 male streamers, there's going to be a lot of ugly dudes on that list. If you look at the top 50, the top 100 female streamers, every single one of them is going to be at least above average. And the reason why is because guys watch girls because they're hot. That's the reason why. It's so obvious, and everybody knows it. But, you know, people don't want to say this, but it's obviously true. So, and 2 of your mods are male VTubers? Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, there it is. 2 of my mods are male VTubers. Well, yeah, and listen, guys, listen. Yeah, well, now you guys shouldn't join Hololive, okay? Well, I didn't know it was 2 of them. I thought it was just 1. They've multiplied now? We have 2 of them now? Oh, my God. How the fuck did we get a second one, man? And, McConnell Red? I don't know, man. And, anyway, so here's the way I see it, right? Is that if you're, like, male VTubers serve no purpose. They have no, like, there's no reason for somebody to be a male VTuber, because that, like, the value that people get out of VTubing is the fantasy of the character. The male people that are watching are not, they don't need to fantasize about a male character. So there's no real, there's no incentive that they're getting out of it. Sorry, Adelie. Sorry, but that, I mean, you know I'm right. You know I'm right about that. I mean, that's just how it is. And again, I'm waiting to be proven wrong, and I've been waiting for a long time, okay? Anonymity is the reason. Well, you can just stream without a webcam. I mean, you can do that. Look at Lyric, for example. I mean, you don't need an avatar. I mean, I guess if you want to do it, that's fine. But I think that there's a lot of, and this is true, and I will say this, and this might get me in trouble, and I hope so. That way I can make content about it tomorrow. But a lot of the girls that do VTubing, not all of them, many of them are attractive, but basically every single unattractive girl that's successful in streaming is a VTuber. Every single one. Guaranteed. Every single fucking one. And so maybe there's like a couple of exceptions on TikTok or something like that, but I guess I can't say every single one. I can say 99%, okay? So that's it. Hate thread, etc. Yeah, and that's the truth. And so if you're an ugly chick, you better get a VTuber model. You do. And I get that other ones do it for anonymity purposes. Other ones do it just because they don't want to have themselves out there all the time. More power to them. All the best to them. I have nothing against it. But I think that this other component needs to be acknowledged because it is real. And so that's all there is to it.
So those were the comments that ruffled some feathers, as I can see they have in chat right here, right at this moment. Asmon, honey, please stop talking to IEQ is greater than your shoe size. Yeah, I don't know what his shoe size is. Perhaps it's quite large. Who knows? Clearly, we've got a genius cooking in the kitchen. Oh, Lotto makes a good point. Yes, I read somewhere that Hollow Stars was negatively impacted by being attached to the Hollow brand and should have been a separate thing. I'm inclined to agree. Yeah, that's an interesting question too. Whether just a different branding that didn't have like the word Hollow anywhere in it might have served them better. Not sure if I have any intuitions on that, but you might well be right, Lotto. Perhaps that's true. So now with this, and oh, by the way, if you're curious, chat, some of the controversy on this came like immediately below. We see Fruit, when will this guy STFU? Content creators calling other content creators useless. So there was a lot of it there on Twitter. Also from Lucius Merriweather, who writes, I can't believe all male VTubers are over now. That's so sad. They just disappeared overnight and are now permanently gone. Yes, no more male VTubers for any of us. But I thought we might take a look at this and kind of evaluate these comments a little bit, perhaps more carefully than is usually done when it comes to media controversies like this. And so I would like to share, chat, right now, my interpretation of his comments. Because it's a little different, I think, than the way that some people have interpreted them. I think the usual interpretation that seems to be given out here is that Asmongold is attacking male VTubers. He's basically saying that if you are a male VTuber, then you suck. Like, it's bad, it's embarrassing to be a male VTuber. I will just say for my part, though I realize probably not everyone will agree with me here, but for my part, I'm inclined not to interpret him as saying something quite that extreme. I do think there is a more charitable interpretation of his comments to be given. And part of that is because he does say at one point in that monologue, here I'm quoting from him, there are guys that are VTubers and more power to them, good for them. And there, I don't think that he was being sarcastic. I think that that was genuine. At least I would like to believe that that was genuine. And so as I was thinking, okay, like, you know, what's the more charitable interpretation, perhaps, of these statements? Really, it seems to me that he's making three claims in this monologue. And the first claim that I see him making is that VTubing is a female-dominated field. In that, just to be a little more specific, it's female-dominated in that it is significantly harder to find viewership or success, you know, quote success, you know, success defined by the conventional metrics, such as subscribers and watch time and brand deals and so on, that it's harder to find success in that sense as a male VTuber than as a female VTuber. I think this is what he means when he says that VTubing is a female activity. And that statement by itself isn't saying that there's anything, you know, wrong with being a male VTuber. I think he's just coming across there as sort of trying to acknowledge a reality of the situation, is that when it comes to getting attention on your streams, with male VTubers, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge. I think he sees VTubing as women getting men to simp for them by getting a cute model. I think the main mistake there is black and white thinking and overgeneralizing. Perhaps. We'll talk a little bit more in a moment about different conceptions of like what it is to be a male VTuber and how fantasy can play in. But yeah, perhaps that's something close to his line of thought. I don't think that's what he's saying, but he's still off base because there are plenty of successful male VTubers. Cover may be powerful, but that doesn't represent the entire industry. True, yeah, and for my part, I don't think he's even saying, and here I'm not saying that you were saying this, Tia, but I think it's compatible with what Asmongold said to acknowledge that there are some successful male VTubers. I think his claim is just that it's going to be more of a challenge to be successful as a male VTuber than a female VTuber. At least that's what I see him saying in kind of the first part of his comments when he speaks of VTubing as being a female activity. Lottle says, to my earlier point, many Hololive fans were the biggest Holostars haters. They couldn't stand their fantasy girlfriends being close to any male to any capacity. Ooh, okay. I can see how, yeah, that does maybe back up the point a little bit about how maybe it would have been better for branding purposes if Holostars had been called something else and just not affiliated with Hololive at all. But I see this as being the first claim of his, is that female VTubing is a female-dominated field, and to be fair, I think that's a difficult claim to disagree with. Like, it does seem that by the conventional metrics of success, most of the VTubers that you find at the top will be female VTubers. And I think that that was all Asmongold was intending to acknowledge, at least in that part of his monologue. Now, a further claim that I see him making, because again, there are 3 of these, a further claim, though he doesn't put it explicitly, he doesn't say it quite like this, is that beauty standards for female streamers are much stricter than they are for male streamers. With the upshot being that if you're going to be successful as a female streamer, then you pretty much need to be conventionally attractive. Whereas if you're a male streamer, you don't have to be. Like, it's possible to be a successful male streamer without being attractive, but it's going to be much more difficult, if not impossible, to be unattractive as a female streamer, with the exception of if you are a VTuber. I think he's saying this is why it's so important, or this is why VTubing is what you might say such a crucial option for women who don't meet conventional beauty standards, in a way where maybe it's not quite as crucial for men. Because for a woman who doesn't meet conventional beauty standards, VTubing will be something that you might say is necessary in a way that maybe it's not for a male streamer. And this claim too, I think, is also fairly hard to disagree with. It's kind of funny because when we put it that way, in terms of, you know, beauty standards being stricter for male streamers or for female streamers than for male streamers, this seems like a pretty straightforwardly feminist point. Like, maybe Asmongold is really the #1 feminist, you know, #1 feminist on the internet. I wonder what he would think of that. Oh, welcome. Might be mispronouncing your name, but Sim Salamari? Hello, people. How are you? I'm doing great, and I hope that you're doing well, too. Nice to see you, Sim. And tell me if I'm mispronouncing your name. I can pronounce it, I can change my pronunciation of it. But always good to see new faces here in chat. It definitely is a female-dominated space, however, that doesn't mean that male VTubers cannot thrive in it. However, it is a lot harder for them to do so. Yeah, I would agree with that characterization, Zero. And I think that that is kind of what Asmongold is getting at. At least I would like to think that that's the idea that he's getting at here. I see the core ideas is 1, the business model VTubing is about getting people to fantasize about their avatar. 2, this somehow mainly happens with male psychology. And 3, this is why Holostars, oh yeah, like was not successful. Yeah, that's an important part of it too, with the fantasy. I think that that's maybe like the 3rd claim that he's making, which I'll touch on in a moment. But yeah, he does seem to be suggesting that that fantasy element is something that will more naturally be used or be useful to, you know, female VTubers than for male VTubers. I think that's too charitable, considering he claims male VTubers are over. Then again, he just says stuff for attention, so seriously analyzing his spiel is arguably futile. Yeah, I mean, what I think is going on here is that I don't think his heart is in the wrong place. I think it's just he chose some irresponsible wording for some of his claims, which maybe he's used to because, you know, hey, that gets clicks, that gets views, and, you know, perhaps that is just sort of his modus operandi. But I do think we're, insofar as this is a topic of general interest in the VTubing sphere and something that has caused a great deal of discourse, I think one thing we can ask ourselves is, okay, like, if we steel man Asmongold, like, if we choose the most charitable interpretation possible of his comments, like, do they come out true? And, like, is there anything that we can learn from them? Or if they are false, like, are they false in an interesting way, you know, a way that maybe can help us to learn some, like, further interesting things about VTubing as a field? I'd like to think that that's possible. Oh yeah, why Holostars was doomed from the start, I see. I think his descriptive claims in terms of the highest level streamers are somewhat accurate. The quote, sexy VTubers, I believe, are the most popular. Entering into more niche communities, it changes. Yeah, that's a good point, Turkey Tipper, is maybe when it comes to the top VTubers, perhaps there are somewhat different norms and rules than for ones who are more indie. And maybe if you're specifically trying to be sort of a lewd tuber, maybe that changes things too, as opposed to if you're not going for the quote, you know, sexy route, if you're not trying to sort of maximize your sex appeal as a VTuber. So those are, I think, also fair points. It is that he's being an asshole about it. Well, you very concisely captured, I think, a lot of what has ruffled people's feathers here, Zero Striker. Yeah, I think it was just a case of irresponsible wording for the most part. Just call me Ari, it's 3 names smashed into 1, even I can't say it correctly. Oh, there's already an Ari in our community, you gotta pick someone else, dude. Well, for present purposes at least, I'm happy to call you Ari, so welcome, Ari. But, so yeah, those are the 2 claims of his that I see sort of operating here. And the third one, because I think it's not quite complete until we add this last claim. The third claim that I see Asmongold getting at is that for anyone who is a male VTuber, that person could be at least as successful a content creator if he did one of 2 things. Like, one of them is he could either stream with his IRL appearance, just using like a regular webcam, or could go faceless, could just not use a webcam at all. And so that's the sense in which, when Asmongold says male VTubers serve no purpose, I think this is what he's getting at, is that for male VTubers, there are alternative pathways to being a streamer that would give them at least as much success. And the reason why he says this, I think, comes back to a comment that you were making earlier. I believe it was you, Web of Concepts, about fantasy, that the value of VTubing lies in the fantasy it provides. Like imagining a character with their own lore, their own backstory, and their own, you know, fantasy-like appearance, typically in the form of an anime character. Now, why is that relevant to, you know, male VTubers? Well, the claim that he seems to be getting at is that male audiences, which are the main audience for VTubers, male audiences in general don't have any need for fantasizing when it comes to a male streamer. Because male audiences usually will be straight, and unlike with female streamers where the fantasy is more important, or where they'll be more drawn to fantasizing about the character, with male VTubers it's just a little less clear why a primarily straight male audience would need that fantasy element in the same way. So that, in brief, is what I at least interpret Asmongold to be saying here. At least this is the most charitable interpretation that I can muster. Oh, I see we have some discourse in the chat about Ari's name. They could be Ari Jr., Ari 2.0, the better one. Call me literally any of those names, Sim, Salim, Ari. I'll call you Sim then. Okay. I'll have to decide what to call you, but it'll be one of those, Sim, Slim, or Ari. But thank you for the clarification, Sim. Claim number 3 is false, in my opinion. Yeah, I think of all the claims that Asmongold is making here, I think 3 is the most contestable. And in fact, I'll be suggesting in a few moments some ways in which I disagree with it. But at least when I asked myself, okay, like, what is it that he's getting at? He chose to express it in, I think, a pretty poor way when he said, like, male VTubers serve no purpose. But I think really that claim was just getting at this claim number 3 here, is that a male VTuber could be just as successful by, you know, doing his IRL appearance or just going faceless. Which is a claim that does raise some questions about not just male VTubers in general, but also even just my specific case. Like, I'm thinking, for example, of how a few months before I became a VTuber, and I would occasionally tell people, like, when they asked what I was up to, I would say, like, oh yeah, like, I'm, you know, preparing to become a, you know, philosophy VTuber, and, like, you know, here's what that is, here's what the process involves. I think sometimes those people, like, I was the first they had heard of VTubers. Like, they didn't know what VTubers were before hearing about them from me. And every once in a while, a question that I would get from people to whom I told this was, like, why bother becoming a VTuber and not just like a regular philosophy YouTuber? And these were, I should emphasize, like, these were not questions that were meant in a mean-spirited way. Like, the person was not trying to subtly insult me or troll me or suggest, like, hey, this is a waste of time or anything like that. I think it was just genuine curiosity about the question of, like, you know, what does the VTuber element add to just, you know, being like a regular philosophy YouTuber? And even now, like, these are questions that I still get in some form. I was quite amused when I saw a comment on a recent stream of mine, which I'll see if I can display the comment here. Actually, it wasn't really a stream, it was my video, but for anyone who saw my recent video about philosophy of religion and responding to Trent Horn on the moral argument, here's a recent comment that came in from one Mr. Suvi. Mr. Suvi commented, why is he moving like that? Why not just make a animation video? At least I take this comment to be asking, like, why is this a VTuber video and not just like a regular, you know, philosophy video with animations of, like, the text and so on, or maybe like a camera showing my face, or maybe just like a faceless, you know, video essay. It's kind of a funny way of putting the question, but to be fair, I shouldn't be too hard on this person. It could be maybe they're, you know, not a native English speaker, and, you know, they're trying their best. And I think it's a question that's probably meant in good faith. So I don't mind receiving the question. But to me, it does raise kind of a funny connection to this recent discourse around Asmongold and the sort of semi-shuttering of hollow stars and so on. I think for a VTuber like me, these questions are especially pressing in a way, given that I am open about my IRL identity, that in my debut stream, I did a face reveal, and, yeah, I've linked to videos showing my face and have talked about papers written under my IRL name. And so one interesting question that I think one, you know, could ask about all this is, you know, would I have been more successful by now under the conventional metrics of success, like, you know, subscribers and so on? Would I have found more success if I had just chosen to become a regular philosophy YouTuber and not a VTuber? And I don't know what the answer to that question is, but even if it is affirmative, like, even if I would have reached, you know, more subscribers, more watch time and so on by now from being just a regular philosophy YouTuber, I can say that I'm very happy to have become a philosopher VTuber. I think that being a VTuber adds some interesting elements to the streams in terms of fantasy, in terms of lore, which I'll be talking about a bit later. So chat, those are some just initial thoughts, initial context on this controversy. In a moment, we're going to get into some data to see, like, how these claims really do stack up. But I want to catch up with chat first. I mean, speaking up for myself, I think Harry Chalmers is easy enough on the eyes, but he can't do stuff like yank out the orb. And that's less fun. Yes. Always have my trusty orb with me. And yeah, like, that sums it up pretty well to you. There's just things like that that you can do as a VTuber that you can't really do as an IRL streamer. Oh, you saw this comment, I see. fantasy aspect is just foreign to me. In many ways, the VTuber avatar is just to add screen activity in the corner that we've been conditioned to expect. Ooh, that's interesting, Turkey Tipper. Yeah, I suppose different viewers will have different preferences when it comes to this kind of thing. For some of them, the fantasy element will be very important, and they can really get invested in a character that the VTuber plays. For others, it might be less important, and maybe it's just purely a visual element. So it sounds like maybe for you, it's more the latter. I think the avatar allows for more entertainment and creativity, like Utility Kun eating axe that one time. It warms my heart that you still remember that web of concepts. But yeah, there are just funny little scenarios like that I think being a VTuber allows one to play out in ways that wouldn't be quite as feasible if one were using like an actual webcam, or if one were going faceless. Axaeon isn't actually an anime guy. Oh, I'm shook. Oh no. You all have found me out. Oh no. I've doxed myself. You're on to me. But yes, chat, let's look at some of the data here on male and female VTubers. Because I think for any heavily empirical matter like this, like, we need to check out some of the data on these things. And one thing that I can say about this resource that I was recently looking at, this is from Stream Charts 2025 top VTubers in terms of hours watched. Now you can see here the number one person that they have on their hours watched, the outlier, is the Burnt Peanut, who is a male VTuber, although I call him a male VTuber. It's controversial whether he counts as one. Some people would not count him as one. But in any case, there are some things about him that are a bit of an outlier. So he's kind of an interesting case. But you can see here all of the others, or almost all of the others, it looks like, except two of them. So you have Kuzuha here on 4th, and then Kanai Channel on 6th. But otherwise, these are all female VTubers in terms of watch hours. And so I think that when someone like Asmongold says, oh, well, VTubing is a female activity, that this is one kind of thing he has in mind, is that generally speaking, again, not universally, but just generally speaking, when you go to the top VTubers, you will find primarily female VTubers there. Now, a further metric you could use to evaluate something like this is peak viewers. So if we look at 2025 in terms of like which streams or whose streams had the peak viewership, interestingly there in first place we have Shion Channel with 355,000 for one of her streams. Let's see, does this one have any male VTubers in it? Oh, it looks like there's one in 8th place. I'm not familiar with this VTuber, but Kenmochi Toya and then Kuzuha Channel. Okay, so we have two male VTubers on this list in 8th and 9th place, respectively. Interestingly, both Saba and Gargura are on the 7th and 10th place. Both Saba and Gargura are on this list. So there too, for a chart like that, you see, again, primarily female VTubers at the top. But I see the point that you're raising here, TOK. To be fair, those are skewed because of graduations. I mean, I suppose so, but at the same time, I think one could ask, well, weren't there also male VTubers graduating in 2025? And like, did any of their graduation streams get this many viewers? You know, it seems not. But when I think about, yeah, are there any male VTubers I'm familiar with who graduate in 2025? I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it does seem plausible to me, at least, that for any male VTuber who did graduate in 2025, like even a popular one, it would surprise me if their viewership were quite this great. Damn, Japan is carrying. Yeah, and that's another aspect to it, is that we see the top VTubers very much dominated by Japanese VTubers here. Now, if we look a bit more generally, I was looking at this from Stream Charts, and I found out that, let's see if I can find where it is on the page, that, oh yes, here it is, that female VTubers continue to represent, this annoying little bar. Okay, there we go. That's better. That female VTubers continue to represent over 70% of the total. And again, just as you all were noticing earlier, with Japan maintaining a substantial lead. So around 70%, at least of the VTubers that they were looking at here, you probably can't see it because it's quite small, but up in the top, this is based on stats of 6,000 plus most popular VTubers. And it looks like by that metric, around 70% or maybe slightly over 70% of them are female VTubers, which I think is probably also at least partly what Asmongold has in mind when he speaks of VTubing as a female activity. Now, on a different report, this is from Stream Hatchet, found that around 80% of top VTubers are female, which checks out, broadly speaking, with everything else considered so far. One thing that I was doing earlier to sort of compare and to try to find some of my own data on this was just looking at, like, just in HoloLive and comparing it to HoloStars in particular. If we look at HoloLive members by subscribers, interestingly enough, Gargara is still at number 1, even though she graduated some time ago. But if we go like all the way down the list, we see there's quite a broad range in terms of subscribers. Now, Sana, of course, has graduated, but looks like the currently active HoloLive member with the least subscribers is Isaki Ryona. Now, if we compare that to HoloStars, which we can see here on their HoloStars YouTube page, they have a list of all the HoloStars here at the bottom. The one that I was able to find who has the most is Regis Altair at 306,000. Now, some of the others get kind of close, but I don't believe anyone has quite as much. Oh, actually, sorry, Robero. Okay, Robero has more, 377. I guess that makes Robero number 1 then, for HoloStars, that is. So if we compare the HoloStars member with the most subscribers to the HoloLive member, currently active HoloLive member with the least subscribers, Isaki Ryona still has more than Robero. And that to me is a pretty illuminating metric, that even the most subscribed HoloStar has significantly fewer subscribers than the least subscribed member of HoloLive. Now, saying all of that, I should add a caveat, which is that in Niji-sanji, male VTubers are, I think, a bit more popular than in HoloStars. So, like, Niji-sanji has some male VTubers who are actually, has very, like Kuzuha here has 2,160,000. And then Kane here, 1,570,000. So there is maybe a bit of an exception when it comes to Niji-sanji. For some reason, they seem to really have the male VTubers part locked down. Oh, Sim says, all right, it's 4 a.m. here. I gotta go to sleep. Have a great day. Curse them time zones. Well, thanks for stopping by, Sim. Hope to see you in future streams. Anyway, it was good having you here. So, though, with that caveat acknowledged, that, like, yeah, Niji-sanji does have some very successful, their number 1 person here is a male VTuber, which is quite remarkable. But with that caveat acknowledged, it still does seem to be, I would say, a general trend across the VTubing sphere that with male VTubers, there's going to be a bit of a tougher time finding viewership. And that's also not considering how, for some male VTubers, will even use a female model. Will be, I might be mispronouncing it, but it's like Babiniku. The people in the chat who know Japanese are probably like wanting to tear my throat out now, but Babiniku VTubers. And one example that I can think of is Rev Says Desu, who's not a VTuber I'm super familiar with. I just know that, like, he's really popular, has, I think, 750,000 subscribers, which for a male VTuber is huge, and has always used, or at least has for a long time used, this female model without a voice changer, interestingly enough. At least as far as I know, he just uses his regular voice and has found quite a bit of success in that. To me, it's an interesting question of, like, are there any women who are VTubers who use male VTuber models? And I can't think of any. Like, I can think of, maybe a few men who use female VTuber models, but it's a little less clear whether there are women who use male VTuber models. I do think, though, that if there were one, it would probably it's hard for me to imagine finding quite as much success in terms of viewership. But maybe the fact that it's so hard to think of examples is perhaps part of the point there. Oh god, not the drama farmer. Yeah, the few clips that I did see of him, it seemed to be of like mostly just kind of like what some people would call react slop, which maybe is what I'm doing right now with the Asmongold stuff, so I might be condemning myself in all of this. But I'm at least attempting to add data and so on and in serious intellectual discussion. How far I succeed, I suppose I would leave that to you, chat, to judge. But yeah, oh, sorry, that's venturing a little bit ahead. In a second, I'm going to consider possible explanations of like why this is. Why is it that female VTubers seem to have more viewership than male VTubers in general? Because I think that's always the question we can ask whenever there's a pattern like this. We could say, like, what is it that explains why this is the case? Oh, Tia says there are. Okay, Inuyama Tamaki, the female actor, is very popular. Okay. I did not know that, but thank you for letting me know that, Tia. That's interesting. I'll have to look Inuyama Tamaki up later and see some of their streams. I'm not sure whether I should use like he or she for cases like this, but in any case, yeah, that is interesting to know. No shame to that, but it's very bizarre to go to Twitch for that kind of thing. Oh, okay, I see. No, you pronounced it right, but I also remember telling you about that. Yep, that's right. Yeah, I think that particular term, you were the one who taught me what it means, Tia, so thank you for that. Oh, Zero says he got most of those subs before he became a VTuber. I see. Well, perhaps then it's not entirely, I guess, a fair comparison or fair data point, if that's the case. I'd also wager that most of the audience, these Japanese VTubers, are from the West. There's a certain demographic of terminally online Western men obsessed with sexualized anime girls. Yeah, now I guess we're getting into the explanations, at least possible explanations, and I think that is going to be a large one, Turkey Tipper, for why this is the case. Kuzuha has been popular for years, which I think is amazing for him. Yeah, no, definitely, like, kudos to him and the others who are just absolutely killing it as male VTubers. I say go with the character's gender unless you're discussing the actor. Okay. Yeah, it seems like a fair norm, I suppose. I'll look forward to seeing his streams later then. Yeah, Uniyama Tamaki. So chat, in terms of the question, like, why are female VTubers, generally speaking, more popular than male VTubers? I was thinking of this question earlier and considering, like, okay, what are some possible explanations of this? And just in the interest of putting everything on the table and considering like every possibility, which is maybe an annoying philosopher thing to do, but I will do it nevertheless. One possible explanation for this pattern is maybe male VTubers just suck. You know? Maybe the female VTubers are just that much more talented across the board than male VTubers, and just given the uniform inferiority of male VTubers, maybe that is why it is so much more popular to have to be a female VTuber than a male VTuber. Oh, I see. Yeah, Zero says yep. Okay. So we have confirmation that this is indeed one explanation. But I will say here of this, I think that yeah, for that one, I just mention it to set it aside. I don't think anyone really thinks that that's the reason. But a more plausible explanation, and I know you're kidding, Zero, but it is funny, yeah. But I think probably the most plausible explanation that I can think of, at least, and this goes back to what you were saying, Turkey Tipper, a moment ago, is that the audience for VTubers consists primarily of men who are mostly straight. And actually, there's also data on this one. It's like, according to the Stream Hatchets report that I looked at earlier, that HoloLive at least reports that 82% of its audience is men, and it does seem likely that pattern, a similar pattern at least, applies to VTubering more broadly. And just to spell it out a little bit, for an audience of men who are mostly straight, are usually going to prefer watching a female avatar over a male avatar. I think partly it's probably just, you know, purely that visual preference. But there's also something, I think, on a deeper level about this. A deeper level we could look at. And it actually connects to the male loneliness crisis, which I know those of you who have been watching Philosophy collabs will remember that we recently did a collab on this. But I do think this is a large part of why female VTubers will generally find more viewership from a male audience, is that for straight men who suffer from loneliness in a romantic context, and especially if they're used to, say, disinterest at best from the women in their life, and particularly if it's not just like disinterest, but maybe if it sometimes veers even into outright distaste or even disgust from the women in their life, sometimes watching a stream of a female VTuber can help provide a sense of female companionship that they might be lacking in their real life. And this is, I think, especially the case if it's a female VTuber who, is very nice to chat, who interacts with chat a lot, asks them how their day was, and so on. For a lot of men in that circumstance, it's very easy to embrace this fantasy element, sometimes even this parasocial element of thinking like, hey, here's this, attractive girl who's funny, who's charismatic, who's into things that I like too. Like I like anime, I like gaming. The women I know IRL are generally not as into those things as I am, but like this VTuber is, like, she loves these things, like she talks about them with me, like, and she's nice to me, she is happy to see me, she interacts with me in chat and so on. I think for many men in that circumstance, it's such an intoxicating thing, and they basically get one-shotted by this and just will, so sometimes, become obsessive over it, but even if not, to the point of becoming obsessive, they will still at least generally prefer to watch female VTubers for that sense of female companionship that they might otherwise be lacking. The audience for VTubers are overwhelmingly male. Like, sure, there may be a lot of female fans, sure, but there are just way more men. Yeah, that does seem to be the pattern, very much so. You won't be able to say that after hearing Astelani0 sing. Oh, like that maybe male VTubers just suck. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Astelani0, but those are, I guess, some other VTubers that I'll have to look up after the stream, and especially their singing streams. Boyfriend VTubers tend to be way popular in the male field, so it makes sense lonely men would be into women VTubers who give them attention. Yeah, that's a further aspect of it, Blue Ice Cubes, is that for the male VTubers who are successful, often that will take the form of, roleplay and giving the boyfriend experience and so on. So there is a sense in which I think for both genders, it's going to be the draw of VTubers in general, or even if not in general, but like in many cases, let's say, will be from stemming from that sense of loneliness and finding a kind of companionship that they might not have in real life. To be fair, most Twitch viewers are men, something like 60+%. The question is really if there are disproportionately more men who watch female VTubers. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question to raise, Turkey Tipper, and I think the evidence suggests that there probably are. Like, at least for HoloLive, like, they report that like 82% of their audience is men, and just anecdotally, it seems like, with most exposure that I've gotten to VTuber audiences, it seems to be primarily men. Though there is an exception, Karis Ufernor, his fans seem to be mostly women. So Karis seems to be, perhaps he's doing some things a little differently. But yeah, like apart from Karis, it just seems in general that they're mostly men. Was curious, so I looked up Inuyama Tamaki. Apparently they describe themselves as a cross-dressing VTuber, so even though they're a woman with a male avatar, they're designed to look like a cute girl. Oh, so many, it goes back and forth. Like at first I thought it was this way and then it was this way. Many twists and turns with this VTuber, I like it. I could send you Astelani0 singing vid on Discord that you could paste in chat for everyone to react right now. No mirroring though, because copyright, I see. Thanks. Yeah, maybe at the end of the stream, Tia, that might be good. Or I'd at least be curious to see it. So yeah, feel free to send it anytime. I've been a HoloLive fan for years and is absolutely mostly male. I mean, it's because the Karis is a boy failure and women like that. Yeah, I didn't know women were into boy failures, but okay, that's interesting. See, I'm picking up lots of useful information in this stream. And usually I honestly expect the opposite. Yeah, no, Karis is full of surprises. And indeed is a community that has many paradoxes to it. So, of course, that is one way we could explain this general phenomenon of why are female VTubers more popular, because the audience for VTubers is mostly men. But there's a part of me that's not satisfied with that. I think that we could push this a little deeper and ask, okay, but like, why is the audience for VTubers mostly male in the first place? I'm not like that. I like competent men. Okay. Well, I will keep that in mind to you, that you are not among the women who are into boy failures. That is now something I know about you. Axe, that's it. You have to become a boy failure. Well, I'll take that as a compliment, Blue Ice Cubes, because that means you think I'm not one already, so. But yeah, so why is it the case that it's mostly men who watch VTubers in the first place? And here I think there are a few possibilities. A few, at least what I see as like plausible explanations for why it's mostly a male audience. And one of them is that just spending lots of time on the internet in general is maybe already a male-coded thing. Perhaps especially if one is just like spending a lot of time watching streamers on the internet, and maybe that just carries over into watching VTubers. Now, I will admit, I had some trouble finding data on this, so I don't know if this is true. But I'm also just thinking of, like, historically, how the internet sort of developed. And a lot of people here are probably too young to remember this. So at the risk of dating myself, like I'm old enough to remember back when like the internet was becoming more common in people's homes. And at first it was kind of a thing where like people in general weren't really like that into it. It was kind of like a place you would go occasionally if you wanted to like look something up. But the internet, it just wasn't really an important part of life for most people in the way that it is now. Except though, like if you were a nerdy dude, like then you might really have lots of uses for the internet and might have really liked it back then. But like the people who were super into the internet and spent lots of time on it then, it seemed like it was almost always men. And there was not like a status thing associated with it. It was not like spending lots of time on the internet was not something that was seen as like a high status activity. Like if anything, it was seen as kind of like you were like a nerd or maybe kind of like a loser. But it was mostly men like who were doing that. And so part of me wonders if that kind of subculture of like spending lots of time on the internet, well, now it's less, I guess, a thing that is as male coded as it was. Maybe it is still to some extent, at least, you know, male coded. I mean, you'll find your occasional chronically online lady, but it's mostly guys. Yeah, that's my sense of it, at least. Oh, also Daisy Murphy. Hello, Axaeon. Yes, hello, Daisy. Nice to see you. Welcome to the stream. Brother, I had dial-up in my teens. Okay, so you know what it's like, Turkey Tipper. You two are familiar with the dial-up sound. Oh, I missed this comment earlier, but I can't babysit two gen mates. We can't have two of them. That's too many boy failures, I see. Well, Karis already has it locked down then. I expect women would be more open to not visually seeing the hot person. Yeah, that might be true. Maybe with women, there's in general a bit more openness to that. I'm surrounded by old people. Oh no. Yeah, I mean, this is basically a nursing home here in this chat right now. So that's one possible explanation for why the audience for VTubers is mostly men. A further one that comes to my mind, though, is that maybe just the fact that VTubing has its roots in anime is one factor that maybe skews the audience male. Because there is some data that suggests that the viewership of anime is primarily male. Perhaps to a bit of a lesser extent now than it used to be. I think now that anime has gone a little bit more mainstream, it's probably a little more it's probably a little less gendered, I should say, than it used to be. Like there was a time when having like being into anime was like a very male coded thing. So even though that's less the case now than it used to be, I still think it seems plausible that like primarily the audience for anime is men. Like there are more men who are into anime than women, and perhaps that has some influence on the audience for VTubing as well. Anime and idol culture, both which have a huge male audience. Oh yeah, even a decade ago that was the case. Okay, yeah. So it sounds like yeah, your experience is similar then, Zero. The pain when your mom wants to use the phone and you want to play RuneScape. Ooh, yes. It's a pain few except those who have experienced it can ever comprehend. When your parents say, "Get off the internet, I need to use the phone." So, Chad, if that's why, or if those are at least some of the reasons why female VTubers are more popular, I think one question we really could ask is, like, is there a point to being a male VTuber then? Or is it, as Asmongold said, perhaps a bit hyperbolically, or perhaps a bit irresponsibly, that being a male VTuber serves no purpose? And here I'm just going to say that I disagree with Asmongold. I think that being a male VTuber can have a purpose. So is there a point to being a male VTuber? I would say yes. And I should say I'm not offended by Asmongold's statement. And again, I don't think he meant it as an attack on male VTubers, but I do think he's mistaken about this. So here are some ways in which it seems to me that being a male VTuber can have a point. And one of them goes back to the point that I know one of you was raising earlier. I'm afraid I don't remember who it was, but that for some of the male VTubers who are very successful, the way in which they are successful, or at least one factor that is contributing to their success, is that they have a largely female audience and they gear their content to that audience by doing things like roleplay and ASMR and giving the boyfriend experience and so on. And their largely female audiences are largely into that kind of thing. And even though that's not every male VTuber, obviously, who takes that path, I think just that alone, like the existence of male VTubers like that, goes counter to Asmongold's suggestion that there's no role for fantasy to play in male VTubers' content. Because earlier we saw him saying that, oh yeah, like the fantasy thing, like that's just for female VTubers, but like here's one significant way in which like you can be a male VTuber but still provide a kind of fantasy and still be successful from it. Now, admittedly, that is a somewhat limited case because again, not every male VTuber is going to want to take their content in that direction, but it is one for some. So I think that one interesting like follow-up to that is we could ask, okay, like what about male VTubers who have mostly male audiences? Like does fantasy have a role for them as well? And I'd like to suggest that it does. I think that even for male VTubers whose audience is mostly male, fantasy can have a place. In a moment, I'll say a little bit more about the kind of place that fantasy can have for male VTubers like that. I think in any industry that is dominated by one gender, there's merit in at least trying to level the playing field, so to speak, rather than throwing up your hands and giving up. Very much so, yeah. I think that like if anyone was considering becoming like a male VTuber, for example, but decided not to because they thought, oh, like it's pointless, nobody's going to watch my streams. Yeah, like I would want to encourage that person not to give up. And likewise for if it's someone who's female, entering a male-dominated occupation. And so partly like what my hope for this stream is that it might help to encourage anybody who sees it, who's maybe interested in becoming a male VTuber, might help encourage them that like it is possible to do this in a fulfilling and successful way. Right, so for male VTubers whose audience is mostly male, again, fantasy can have a role there. And the way in which it can have a role, I'm going to be a little indirect in how I present this, but I'd like to make a comparison to professional wrestling. That's right, pro wrestling. Always a good comparison whenever you're talking about VTubers. Because think about pro wrestling, there's a lot of fantasy involved, right? Like, for example, here we have on the left, The Undertaker. And just because I didn't want both my examples to be like wrestlers from kind of yesteryear, I tried to find like a more recent wrestler. And I found this one on the right. I'm actually not sure I remember what his name is. It's like Dan something, Dan Housen maybe. I don't really know too much about him. But like clearly just from the picture, you can see, okay, there's a lot of like acting up a role and like playing a fantasy. And really for both of these characters and for wrestlers in general, there's the outfits that they wear, the makeup they put on, the personas they play, the feuds, the storylines, the pretend fighting itself. Like all of that is fantasy. All of that is kayfabe. Despite the fact that they appear IRL, like these are, they're not using virtual avatars, but there still is that heavy fantasy element, just in terms of the acting out roles and sort of embodying that kayfabe. And the reason why this matters here is that most wrestling fans, like most people who watch wrestling and get really into it, are men. Again, I think not quite to the extent that it used to be, maybe. Like there are more female fans of wrestling now than in the past, but still, like it's mostly men, like even now, who get into wrestling. And so the reason why I want to tie this back to Asmongold's comments is that like he was suggesting that a male audience will not like have any need for fantasy when it comes to male performers, male VTubers. But it seems to me wrestling is kind of a counterexample to this. Because as wrestling shows, like if the fantasy elements are well fashioned, like they can be engaging and are engaging to mostly male audiences. In the case of wrestling, they might not look quite the same as the fantasy elements of some like female VTubers, for example, but they can serve an important role all the same. Like if the fantasy is deeply crafted, if the acting is good, if the makeup and outfits really fit the character and so on, then like absolutely men can kind of get into that fantasy. And you know, in a way that they would not if it was poorly done or if it just was not there at all. Web of Concepts says, I gotta go to sleep, but it was fun. Take care. Okay, thanks, Web of Concepts, for stopping by. Hope you have a nice rest. Clearly, male VTubers need to fight. Yeah, maybe that's the next step for male VTuber kayfabe. I like it, Zero. I like that idea very much. I mean, it works because, yeah, they both do kayfabe. Very much so, yeah. Clearly, the solution here is that you need to trailblaze hot male VTuber avatars and give the women out there some eye candy. Well, I think that's the way many or most male VTubers go, is that, you know, their avatar is someone like who's very good looking. And so I suppose that's part of it. A bit later, I'm going to talk about some additional elements that I think help if one is going to become a male VTuber. But that can certainly be one of them. This is a bit tangential, but earlier Leon and I were saying that I'm a rushdown, you're a grappler, and Karis is a zoner. We're characters in a fighting game. Yeah, I can see that. Especially you being a rushdown and Karis being a zoner. That does make a lot of sense. To achieve male viewership, we clearly need a bald alpha male VTuber to cater to men. Yeah. I'm not sure if I've ever seen a bald male VTuber, but that would be quite interesting if there's one who's taken that path to their appearance. One of the reasons I continued watching VTubing is due to the male VTuber niche. Funnily enough, okay. It is quite intriguing to hear, Daisy. Happy to hear that you found interesting, worthwhile content from the male VTubers that you've been watching. So, again, just to recap all of that, I think that it is absolutely false to say that, like, if it's a male audience watching men, then there's no role for fantasy. And I think wrestling very clearly is a counterexample to any such suggestion. Now, of course, that doesn't tell us exactly what the fantasy looks like when it comes to male VTubers, because it's a little different for like male VTubers and wrestlers. You know, one difference is that with wrestlers, we're looking at their IRL appearance, like even if they're wearing makeup. So it's maybe not quite as big a departure from their appearance as, you know, like a VTuber model is from the person piloting the model. But just to give some examples, there are some male VTubers out there who I think like are doing really cool things with their fantasy, with their lore, and incorporating that into their streams. So I wanted to give some examples of male VTubers who I think are like doing really cool things with this. And one of them that comes to mind is this man right here, who many of you will already know, Pinboo. Yes, Pinboo. And just to give a little bit of background on his lore, you can see that penguin to the left. Its name is Ket. And he's also behind Pinboo on the right-hand side of the screen. You can kind of see him like over Pinboo's shoulder, which is not like that in every stream, but sometimes Ket will make an appearance. And Pinboo is a programming and puzzle gaming and music making VTuber. He does lots of really nerdy things, and I say nerdy in like a very appreciative sense. Like I think his streams are so cool. But the lore behind his streams is that Ket the penguin basically hired Pinboo to entertain him, and and so like Pinboo puts on these various streams of like fixing computers and doing like, you know, retro gaming and like puzzle games and making music, making arrangements and things like that for the sake of entertaining Ket. And to me, it just would not feel the same if there were not this lore and this fantasy element to his streams. Like, could Pinboo have been just like a regular flesh and blood YouTuber doing all these things? Yes, but I think something would have been lost. And likewise for if he were like, you know, just like a faceless VTuber, I think something important there would be lost. His streams, I don't think, would be as engaging if he did not have this. And then similarly, another person many of us will know and have a person who has come up several times already in today's stream and in the chat is ChxrryVT, who has, I think, a very well-developed lore around his streams and his online presence in general. Like, one way you can see that coming into play in ChxrryVT's streams is through Parrot, the crow on his shoulder on the right-hand image, and also flying away in the left-hand image. The way that Parrot occasionally reads chat's comments, and even like not just reading chat's comments, but the fact that there's like lore and sort of drama around Parrot, like Parrot's runaway arc and like Parrot coming back and so on, and just like, you know, annoying Karis, but like living with him as sort of like a companion in the Library of Alexandria. Also on that note, just like the Library of Alexandria itself and how it connects to his Discord, which just is called the Library of Alexandria, and how Karis is the last librarian of Alexandria. There's a lot there that just really forms a cool interconnected whole to his streams. And I think much like with Pinboo, if we just imagine for a moment Karis as a regular YouTuber, like if he didn't have any of this lore and fantasy elements to it, if he was just like a regular YouTuber who occasionally appeared on stream just to like present his thoughts on philosophy or to do like occasional gaming streams, it just really would not be the same. And likewise for if he were a faceless VTuber, like if he didn't use a webcam at all, it also would not be the same. I think being able to associate a face with the character, with the content creator, absolutely is very important. I let Pinboo know he was on your screen. He is intrigued. Oh, yeah. Well, he's earned it. I think Pinboo is just absolutely fantastic, wonderful VTuber. I think what's going on is men view male VTubers as a little cringe if they're not putting on a cool persona. Any pandering to women makes them less interested. Meanwhile, women in the field are cute. Yeah, I suppose that could be a part of it too. Is that if a male VTuber goes about in a way that appeals to women, especially if it's like, you know, boyfriend experience, ASMR, that kind of thing, probably most men won't be interested. But I do think there's also like one cool thing is to consider, like, okay, what about male VTubers who find like both male and female audiences? And I think to some extent the VTubers I'm looking at now are ones who find that kind of success, perhaps especially for the next one, the one that I'm about to introduce. It's scarily similar to why men were all over Andrew Tate, because he was cool, and of course you want to follow someone who you admire and want to be like. Oh yes, yeah, very much so. I think there we see the kind of gendering going in the other direction, where like Andrew Tate has a huge audience, but it's almost all men. Like very few women would be interested in watching, you know, his content. So that's kind of, yeah, an example from the other direction, I suppose. But another VTuber who I think is really cool is Phi the Neutrophil, member of V Theorem. And he does streams on biology and various things like microbiology, cells, and so on. And his lore is that he is a neutrophil, which I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I think maybe it's like a white blood cell or like a kind of white blood cell. But anyway, in his streams, you know, he's able to give kind of like a perspective on, you know, cell biology from a cell, you know, itself, from like a single-celled organism or from a type of cell. And it just sort of adds to the branding and the humor and the lore of his streams that he's able to present them in that way, to frame them in that way. And Phi, of course, is extremely successful. I think he has like 70,000 subscribers. And as far as I know, is you know, like, you know, subscribers of both genders. So it's not like it's like all women or all men. If you don't know what he is, watch Cells at Work. Okay, yeah, I'll have to watch that next. If I may, I think there's a societal stigma against men in the performing arts, for example, singing and dancing, as that's considered flowery. I think VTubing gets included in that while Facecam does not. Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion, Tia. I hadn't thought of that angle, but it does seem plausible that, yeah, maybe insofar as there's a stigma against men in the performing arts in general, on the grounds that it's flowery, then, yeah, perhaps VTubing is considered as being more in that sphere than just using a face cam. I mean, anecdotally, I will say, like, when a male VTuber comes to mind, I imagine just someone who is not really particularly, you know, like masculine or bro-y, but just kind of like wants to be a VTuber and just like happens to be a man. Whereas when I think about face cam male streamers, I think a lot of them are maybe more into like the kind of bro-y persona of like really into like exercising and being like ultra, you know, confident and just kind of that kind of thing. Maybe occasionally a bit obnoxious, but, you know, in a way that maybe their viewers find humorous. Yeah, it's easier for me to associate that, or easier for me to associate that with, you know, face cam streamers than male VTubers. And then, of course, there is the outlier. This man. I told you, chat, he was going to make another appearance. And here he is, the outlier among male VTubers, the burnt peanut, who is, by some metrics, I think, but if you're going by, you know, CCV, concurrent viewers, or watch time, he is currently the world's #1 VTuber, or should I say PTuber? But in any case, some people will consider it controversial, like whether he is a VTuber or not. Maybe he's not the usual kind of VTuber, you could say, at least. Like the fact that his model like includes his real eyes and real mouth, but like is otherwise a virtual avatar. For my part, I would consider him a VTuber just because like he does use a virtual avatar for the most part. Even though I don't know if that's a label that he himself agrees with or would agree with, like thinking of himself as a VTuber. But he did win the recent, like there was the VTuber award ceremony for 2025, I think it was, and he won like the #1 VTuber for that ceremony. That was how like a lot of people heard about him for the first time. See where it says, ugh. Okay, yeah, I can see we have some people here who are not very much fans of the burnt peanut. Oh, Blazecube says, oh, he's so wonderful, I love him already. Yeah, when I first heard about him, and it was around the time that VTuber award ceremony took place and he won it, because like I had never heard of him before that, and I was like, okay, like how does this guy win like the #1 VTuber award, and it's someone I haven't heard of? So I watched a few of his streams, and as far as I can tell, with his stream, there's not really like a very deep like lore component or fantasy component. The VTuber element to it is primarily visual. There's still maybe a light element of fantasy, you could say, and that like his appearance as a peanut arguably adds to the humor of his streams, like through a certain absurdity. He mostly plays shooting games, like, you know, Arc Raiders and Apex Legends and things like that. And like it's very loud, like very boisterous. And there's not really any like political commentary or anything like that in his streams. It's all just like like, hey bros, like let's get together and like, you know, play a fun shooting game. And I think he streams like every day for like, you know, 7 hours or something. So like he streams a lot, which is I think part of his success here. But one cool thing about like his story when it relates to male VTubers and the question of finding success as a male VTuber is that he initially streamed with his real face, like a while back, before he became the Burnt Peanut. He used an actual webcam to stream, but did not find all that much success with it. Like he really broke out into the mainstream success once he started streaming with his peanut model. So like I found that kind of interesting. And what I suspect the appeal of his streams is to most of his viewers is just that they are unapologetically boisterous and sort of boyish in their content in a way, the content of his streams. And it's in a non-political way too. And so I think for people who are maybe just like tired of politics and tired of, you know, heavy discourse, I think they like to just, you know, tune into his streams to kind of turn their brain off for a while and just kind of, you know, have the experience of being as if they're playing games with a couple of their bros, you know, a couple of their friends. Pre-debut, I asked my friend Ed if my model looked too scary, and he basically said Burnt Peanut exists, so no. Yeah, I never thought of your model as scary to you, but yeah, it's true. Yeah, but Burnt Peanut is out there, so we can always compare ourselves to him if we want to find assurance that we are not, maybe not quite as scary. It was when I was rigging my facial expressions. I was wondering if it was scary when I show my teeth. I see. Yeah, I don't think it's scary when you show your teeth. Oh, but Lotto says, can confirm Tia scares me. And Blue Ice Cube says, yes, Tia, your model is so scary. So, chat, with those in mind, those examples of male VTubers who have found a lot of success, I'd like to end on some takeaways. Some lessons that I think we can learn from all this. And one thing that I would say, like the way I would put it, is that the male VTuber debuff, as it's often called, is real, but not insurmountable. So it's possible to be a successful male VTuber, even if it takes an immense amount of hard work and a certain amount of luck. I don't think anyone should be discouraged from becoming a male VTuber if that is something that they're interested in. But I do think that there are some things that one has to keep in mind. Like if you're going to become a male VTuber, then there are some, you know, tips and tools then that you should use, I think, to have a good chance of finding success. Although I should mention here, of course, like this is all just geared toward people who are going for like growing in their viewership, like who want to grow as VTubers. If you're just doing it for fun, then like none of this applies. Like you can just do whatever you want, obviously, if you're doing it for fun. But if you do want to be successful by the conventional metrics of success, such as, you know, growing your viewership and finding brand deals and just having a large impact, making a large splash on social media and elsewhere, then I think some things to keep in mind are, first, try not to be just a male streamer who happens to use a VTuber model. That would be my first tip for being a successful male VTuber, is to try not to have the VTuber model be like just this purely visual thing that you happen to have in your streams, but where like if you switched it, like if you went to using a webcam or if you went to going faceless, like essentially nothing else about your streams would change. Like it would be pretty much the same experience, just absent the VTuber model. If you're doing it that way, then I think that it will seem, you know, to many people that like hey, like what's the point of really, you know, using a model to do it then? Like what is the model adding to the streams? And I think instead of doing it that way, one alternative you could go for is to more deeply integrate the VTuber element into your streams, into your lore. And so if you have like lore around your character, and you have, stories around them, and you can, integrate that into your stream assets, like your backgrounds and your stream activities, and integrating your character's appearance into it. Like, those are all really cool things that can make your streams more memorable. And I was trying to think of examples of this. I mean, there are, of course, many examples one could point to, but I will just say, in the hope of not being too vain about this, in the hope of still having enough humility, I'll point to myself as an example. Like in my case, with the orb that you can see here, like that is part of my lore. Like, this is my true form, an orb who has traveled among myriad planets learning philosophy, and now has stopped here on his way to Earth and taken human form. I think also with me, the somewhat professorial appearance, like you can see here from the cape, not the cape, but sorry, the tie that I'm wearing, and the rest of my outfit generally, seems relatively professorial, which fits with the educational nature of at least some of the streams that I try to do, some of the teaching streams. Of course, I do also have this space cape, which relates to, see, as you can see there, the swirling space in the background, relates to my journeys among the stars, and so on. And that, of course, is also a very important part of my lore. So for me, like, one thing that I sometimes think about when it comes to all this, when I think about in connection to just being, a male VTuber, but like in my case in particular, being someone who is open about my IRL look and identity, like one question that I think a person could ask me is, well, wait a minute, like, is this compatible with the fantasy element? Like, is viewers knowing what my real face looks like and my real name and so on, does that undermine the fantasy that I'm trying to provide with all of this lore? And here I would like to think, I mean, of course, ultimately this is not something I can fully judge by myself, like I have to leave it to the viewers, but I would like to think that it need not undermine the fantasy. And again, using wrestling as a comparison. So like with wrestling, fans will, like, at least generally be very well aware that the feuds, the storylines, the fighting and so on is all just pretend. But for all that, like, they won't be any less invested in it. Like, they might know that a given wrestler's real name is not the same as their ring name. They might know that, like, a wrestler's in-ring persona is not how the wrestler, like, actually acts in their life outside the ring. And they can know all of that and be aware of all that, but still, like, during a match, they will, like, get really invested in the storylines and, like, invested in the outcome of the match and so on. And to me, this is really cool that humans have this imaginative capacity to switch between these two levels of engagement. Like, they might hear a wrestler giving an interview on a podcast where the wrestler talks about the nature of the business and, like, setting up the moves correctly and, like, how a given match was scripted and so on. And, like, the person listening can be interested in that and, like, really enjoy hearing about how it all works behind the scenes. But then, like, during the actual match, or like the next match, they will go back to that level of fantasy type engagement and just really get fully immersed in the fantasy. I think that shows that our imaginative capacities are remarkably flexible. And I like to think that holds true for VTubers just as much as it does for wrestlers or for anyone else. Your character design just slaps, in my opinion. Like, it's simultaneously simple yet iconic. I tried to design mine with the same ethos, and I think it works so well. Oh, thank you, Tia. Yeah, I think yours does have that kind of, like, it's not too busy. It has that a certain simplicity to it, but, like, it's also very recognizable with the red and the scales and so on. That's very nice of you to say that about mine. Yeah, my hope in going for a character design like this was to have it be just kind of far out enough to where it doesn't look just like a regular person. Like with the monocle and the earring and the space cape and so on, I wanted it to be someone who, like, looks a little different from someone you would normally see. Like, anime inspired enough to be kind of otherworldly, at least faintly otherworldly, but also still, like, professional looking enough to give, like, academic type streams, and teach and do things like that. So that was at least the goal I was trying to to reach there was to sort of navigate those two spaces. Orb mentioned, yes. Orb indeed mentioned. I, for one, am invested in leveling the playing field and by platforming dudes and bringing more female viewers into the space. I could have joined a female VTuber and maybe been more successful, but didn't. Well, I think that says a lot about you, Tia, that you would have that goal. And yeah, that is one thing I think is really cool about philosophy, and also like V Theorem and groups like us, is that we're not, you know, we don't exclude anyone based on gender. Like, we're open to, you know, all genders. I think that's really neat. So that would be my first tip, chat, for being a successful male VTuber is, yeah, try not to be just male streamer who happens to use VTuber model. Instead, have your character's fantasy and lore kind of more deeply integrated into your look and into your streams. And just to kind of flesh out the analogy with wrestling, like, if we compare a wrestler whose look aligns very closely with his lore and his promos and so on, like here I'm thinking of like The Undertaker, who had kind of sometimes like a faintly Grim Reaper type aura to him and sort of leaned into that, and it reflected in the way that he dressed and the kinds of, you know, promos he gave and the things that he said and so on. Like, if we compare that to a wrestler who has like an equally far out look, like an equally curated look to him, like maybe he dresses as like a demon or like the Grim Reaper or like an alien or something, but if the wrestler doesn't accompany that with any lore or fantasy in the same direction, then the look just won't seem to be serving any purpose. And like, audiences will just be confused of like, okay, why does he look like this? Like what purpose is this all serving? So I think that for VTubers too, like integrating the fantasy and lore into the streams, perhaps especially in the case of male VTubers, is very important. One possible exception to this tip, though, is comedy. Like, in the case of the Burnt Peanut, to go back to him, I think that with him, like, there's not really a very deep integration of like a backstory, of lore, of anything like that. Like, the appeal of his streams is just like, oh, like, here's a funny like peanut character, like, you know, playing some shooting games, like, let's hang out together. Though even for him, I would say, like, just one caveat one could raise about that is like his broader branding and transition screens and so on maybe do add a kind of lore, like when it shows him, like, you know, storming a castle, or, you know, being part of like a SWAT team or things like that. You could say maybe it gives him like an endearingly underdog vibe, like the fact that he's a peanut, like taking on humans and so on. So I could see that being a part of maybe his broader lore or branding or fantasy elements. But still, in general, like, it does seem to me like comedy is maybe an exception, where like if you're just a guy who's really funny, then you might not need a super developed, you know, fantasy to accompany your model. Another male VTuber I can think of who's maybe also kind of like that, who's successful, like, despite not having a very deep lore, is False ID from Things VTubers Say. And in his case, it's like, since he's a VTuber who reports like on news about the VTubing sphere, I think that's really the key value that his viewers see, like, in his streams and videos. So like, there's a sense in which he doesn't really need anything else. But yeah, those are two like possible exceptions that come to mind there. Agreed. Co-ed arrangements are more entertaining / interesting than monogenetic ones anyway, in my humble opinion. Okay. Yeah, interesting. I don't know if I think sometimes, I guess I would say I don't know if I have an opinion on it. Like, I guess to me, like, gender just doesn't really enter the equation when it comes to which streams are more entertaining. But I do agree that, yeah, co-ed ones can be like every bit as entertaining as monogender ones. Absolutely. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 for being a successful male VTuber is to, as far as you can, as far as possible for you, incorporate your special talents and knowledge into your VTubing. And bonus points, by the way, if these are talents or forms of knowledge that not many VTubers have. And some examples that come to mind here are like Pindu, whom I talked about earlier, sometimes does programming streams. And this is something that really, like, I haven't seen in many other VTubers. In fact, I'm not sure if I've seen any other VTubers who have done streams of just programming. And so I think that that's one thing that really sets Penbu apart, is that, you know, he has this talent and is willing to show it on stream. And that, I think, is part of the draw that he has. For someone like Phi, the neutrophil, part of his talent or his knowledge lies in the fact that he has expertise in biology. And so he of course leans into that and makes that a large part of his streams. And that's a key part of why he has become so successful. With Karis too. Karis Euphranor, being like a philosopher VTuber. Of course, by now there are, you know, a few other philosopher VTubers. Now Karis is no longer the only one, but like he was the first one. And just like being able to like join the VTubing sphere, the VTubing space, and be like, hey, I'm going to be a philosopher VTuber. Like, even though there are no others, like, I'm going to be the first one. I think that that was something that really distinguished Karis, and still to a large extent does, just given that there are not, you know, many VTubers who know philosophy. So whatever special talents you have, whatever special knowledge you have, try to incorporate that into your streams. I think that will give you a much greater chance of success as a male VTuber than if your streams do not involve any special talents or knowledge, and like if you're just doing the same things that every other VTuber is doing. Tip number 3 is to make your streams visually interesting, like in ways that go beyond your model. Because I think, you know, we could say, let's face it, like as a male VTuber, your model probably will not be quite as interesting to look at for most male audiences as a female model would be. But the good news is that you can make up for this, or at least to a certain extent, by making the like other parts of your streams more visually interesting than they would otherwise be. Like, for example, in this stream, one thing that I'm doing to try to like add something like a little different to it is using this 3D panel effect in OBS for the slideshow. You can see like it kind of floats around and kind of looks like a 3D panel. In fact, if I just show you what it looks like without that, see, like this is with that effect off, like this is what it would have looked like if it were just like a regular slideshow, which to me is just not quite as exciting. Like I kind of like this look. I think that this makes it look just a little cooler. And so that's true as like a small change. True, it's a subtle, not super significant change, but it does add something, at least I like to think. I know in past streams too, there have been cases where I've experimented with other OBS filters, some of which I think I still actually have on my model. Like, those of you who saw my Minds Beneath Us streams will recognize the fractured frame when, oh yeah, and here's some color correction too. So that was kind of like a cyberpunk style game, and tried to like get in the zone, you know, get in the spirit by using some filters in OBS. But yeah, just like anything you can do like that to help out the visuals of your streams, I think really does help. And this is where video editing experience can make a big difference. I know not everyone edits their videos, like especially if you're a VTuber who has like already gotten big and has like lots of viewers. Most of them will hire editors to edit their videos just because editing takes a long time and hiring an editor saves time. And all of that makes sense. But I do think that like for anyone who is into VTubing, having at least some experience editing videos is helpful, just for being able to get, I think, more of a sense of like what visual effects you can do, what visual effects would work well for a given stream. Because even something simple can make a big difference to the overall look of your streams. Like, for example, this is not something I've really done before, but something that I look forward to doing in the future is if I ever do like a retro gaming type stream, then probably what I will do for that stream, unless I forget, is to apply like a retro video game style filter, you know, to my model during the stream. Or like one thing that I've done in the past for certain other streams is just like using some special new backgrounds that like really fit well with the theme of a particular stream. Like those of you who were in my encouragement stream, for some reason I still have this scene in OBS. I just couldn't delete the scene. But yes, chat, You are a person of value, and I will always believe in you. Do you remember that encouragement stream? I could have just done that stream, in my regular office, but somehow I thought it would be more special if I tried to give it a special look. So yeah, just finding different backgrounds that like fit with the theme of particular streams rather than always using the same, default background. I think that also can really help here. I feel encouraged. I'm so delighted to know that, Lottle. Well, thanks, Ax. Oh, you're very welcome. Queer people have already dealt with the lack of intrigue in male clothing. Voice cube. Oh, see the /J for the joke. I mean, one thing that I think is fair to say is that probably men in general don't experiment with their fashion as much as women do. But maybe that's where VTubing can help. Maybe with VTubing, perhaps men would be a little more comfortable. Or maybe it's just even like possible to experiment with fashion a little bit more as a VTuber. Like, I know I don't have, a space cape in real life. But as a VTuber, I do. At least for me, my favorite collabs of all time were HoloLive and HoloStars collab. I think it's because men and women bring different things to the table, but I get that it's an opinion. Okay, that's a respectable opinion. Yeah, I think that it does, it perhaps adds something interesting and when there are collaborations like that. You really are the OBS wizard. Oh, thank you, Tia. That's so kind of you. I love it when people notice that I'm doing something different in OBS. I mean, it looks real cool. Oh, thanks, Zero. It's true, Victorian fashion needs to make a comeback. Might have to start thinking of ideas for my next costume, my next outfit. Maybe that gives me a clue. Maybe something, yeah, Victorian. Call for the intricate clothing is strong in you, Zero. It is, Zero. Yes, very much so. Now, a final tip that I would like to give chat when it comes to being a male VTuber, and this one might sound a little surprising at first. You might wonder, like, doesn't this apply just as much to female VTubers? And perhaps it does. Like, a lot of these tips will not just be for male VTubers, but I think will perhaps take on a heightened importance for male VTubers. Tip number 4 is to be authentic, to be real with the audience, be willing to speak from the heart. Don't be afraid of showing them that real side of yourself. Now, I realize that probably sounds a little paradoxical given what I said earlier about fantasy and lore and like building that up, but I actually don't think these 2 points are in tension with each other. I think you can have strong fantasy elements to your streams, but still speak in a way that is very sincere and very grounded in your experiences and feelings. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up for male VTubers in particular is that I think in general, like if you have a mostly male audience, if we're just assuming a mostly male audience, a male audience might be willing to watch a female VTuber, like who happens to just be playing a character, and maybe like maybe that's really there's not much else to her streams than that perhaps in a given case, and like the male audience can be aware of that, like at some level, and like they can engage with those streams specifically because of the fantasy involved. Yeah, not all female VTubers are like that, but just like I'm imagining one who is, like you can be a female VTuber and like still find success, just from playing a character, and like male audiences will be willing to accept that. I think that it's fair to say male audiences watching a male VTuber will probably not in general be willing to keep watching if the male VTuber in question is just playing a character, like, or just engaging in fantasy. Again, with the possible exception of if the character is really funny. Like that's one of the only exceptions I can think of. In general, I think if you're a male VTuber and you are someone who speaks authentically during your streams, like if you're not afraid to be real with your audience, and especially if you can speak to aspects of the feelings and experiences that might resonate with your audience, like they might have experienced similar things or thought and felt similar things as they watch you, and they might be reminded of that. That gives male audiences much more of a reason to stay, like a reason to keep watching you as a male VTuber than they would have if you didn't engage in that kind of very authentic sort of talk. So that is one tip that I very heartily recommend to all male VTubers to keep in mind. Of course, it could be scary sometimes to be authentic, to say like what you really think and what you really feel, especially if, like, for example, you're maybe giving an unpopular opinion, or if you're worried that like other people might not understand how you feel. Chances are there will be at least some people who understand, but I would recommend that you always be willing to be authentic in that way. And I think that the really cool thing is that if you are consistently someone who is authentic in that way, then over time your audience will build up, and it will be made up of people who appreciate you for the person that you are, and you won't feel like you have to hide yourself on stream. So that's just another benefit of sort of being open about all this. And so, chat, those are my tips for being a male VTuber. And that's my final takeaway from this stream. As you can see, that's the end of my slideshow. Yep. Now we go back to the beginning. But that was fun. I enjoyed that. So thanks so much, chat, for talking and thinking about male VTubers with me. Maybe stick around for just a little while longer in case anyone has any questions or follow-up thoughts that they want to offer. But yeah, one thing that seems clear to me is that like this topic is probably not going to go away anytime soon. I think that as time goes on, it'll be interesting to see if things change, like if there are more male VTubers who find like really widespread success. And that might be the case, or it might still be kind of a niche thing. But I suppose with the future like that, only time can tell. Your polygamy take is what intrigued me into becoming a fan. I don't know what that says about me, haha. Well, Lotto, I think it shows that you're the kind of person who can appreciate an unconventional view. Regardless of whether it's a view you agree with or not, you're the kind of person who can think, oh, hey, like that's a kind of new, you know, kind of intriguing viewpoint. And I think that says a lot about you. There are many people who will be kind of turned off by when they see someone who embraces a viewpoint that's a bit unusual, or maybe it's a viewpoint they themselves disagree with. But I think if you're the kind of person who can, like, their first impulse is to ask, okay, like, why does the person think that? Or like, hey, I want to hear more about that. To me, that is epistemically a very praiseworthy thing. So I think that that's really cool that you have that quality. Oh yeah, not. Oh no, sorry, Zero. I think I've forgotten now what that was in response to. I've said too many things since. But whatever it was, yeah, definitely not. For the record, I literally don't care who says what about male VTubers. I love you 5 ever Ax. Aw. Well, thank you, Tia. That means a lot. Wait, so like even if Asmongold says that male VTubers are over, you will still support me? That means so much. Yes, thank you, Tia, very much for that. Oh, the male VTuber argument won't go away soon. I see, Zero, thank you. Yeah, you know, it's one of those things that just has the air of being a topic that will probably be in the discourse for quite some time. I don't know if this stream will make any difference to it, but my hope is that by bringing some data to it and being able to think things through and at least an attempt at, you know, a careful way, maybe that will help to some extent for anybody who stumbles upon this stream. I love you 3 ever, Ax. Oh, thank you, Voice Cubes. Not sure how 3 ever compares to 5 ever, but 3 ever, I mean, hey, I'll take what I can get, you know. So I appreciate it all the same. Thank you. I really enjoy how you explore different topics, whether I agree or not. Well, that's nice of you to say, Lotto. And yes, you're very welcome. I'm glad to hear that you enjoy how I explore topics. I always have enjoyed exploring topics with you all, chat. Having you all here to talk about them with me and to raise questions and to kind of, you know, press me on certain points if there's something I say that doesn't make sense, or if there's something I say that's open to objections. I like it when chat is willing to call me out on things like that and put me on my toes. To be fair, I put little stake in what Asmongold had to say about anything. Yes, your opinion of Asmongold is very clear, Zero. Yes, I can tell you're not one of his biggest fans, and that's okay. You know, I can't really say I really watch Asmongold much myself, but every once in a while, one of his clips will come on my timeline, and I'll be like, oh, okay, I guess this is the newest controversy that everyone is talking about. But I think with that, chat, probably in just a second, I'll be heading out. And I think later tonight, I'm not sure what I'll do a bit later. What do you think, chat? Should I take a nap? Work on some video projects for later? Or maybe just doing some gaming? There's so many possibilities. I don't know if I can decide, chat. How do you decide between working on videos or gaming? Perhaps gaming? Yeah, I haven't done any gaming today. But then I also feel like I haven't done a lot of work in general. I took a walk outside today in the neighborhood, which was really nice, and met with a student. I love late night gaming. Oh, me too. Yeah, late night gaming is the best. Regarding what Lottle said, I think that's a strength of yours. I don't know if you'd think I do a great job, but I aim to be able to express your view of monogamy as fluently as if it were my own. I really admire it. Oh, thanks, Tia. Well, I think that is an admirable goal to have, is anytime one disagrees with someone else on something, like has a different viewpoint, just even the fact of like having the goal of being able to articulate the other's viewpoint as if it were one's own, to articulate it so well that the other person thinks like, wow, I wish I could have put it so clearly. I think that absolutely is a noble goal to have. Oh, Golf Fox Trot Lima? Sorry, I might be mispronouncing your name, but hi, welcome. Welcome to the stream. We're sort of coming to a close of it now, but can always rewind if you want to see the earlier parts. Right now, we're just kind of doing some general chatting, but good to see you. Always good to see new faces around here. But, yeah, I think, Tia, regarding the part of your comment where you say, I don't know if you'd think I do a great job, I do think it's clear in your engagement with me from, you know, the debates we've had and things like that, that you're someone who strives to be charitable to the opposition. And I think that is very important intellectual virtue. Because I have had debates before with people, or maybe I should just say, like, I don't know if debates is too dignified a term to give them, but just like, you know, social media discussions with people who, like, immediately it was clear that they did not have much interest in being charitable to me. Like, they would rephrase my points in, like, the least charitable way possible, the way that would make it seem like I was saying something crazy. And yeah, whenever someone starts doing that, I just pretty much check out. Like, it's just not worth, you know, even trying in most cases like that. But, like, you don't have that problem, Tia. Like you're the opposite. I think you're someone who really does try to give a fair shake, you know, to the opposing viewpoint. And that is such a crucial virtue for anyone engaged in any discussion. Would you still like to react to the singing video together before heading out? The singing video? Well, let's see. Yeah, how long is it? I tell you what, if you send it to me in Discord, I'll take a look at it. Oh, maybe you already have. Okay. I just opened Discord and okay, yeah, you're way ahead of me there. So the thing, it says Astel and Izu are hollow stars in Suisse, forming cinema, perhaps a live in 3D from Hollow New Year's concert 2022. Yeah, let's take a look at this. I tell you what, chat. As we say, my goat. I'm sorry you had that experience. The only time I strawman you is to your face because it's all in good fun. Yeah, sometimes a strawman could be the source of like a good joke, and if that's the case, then of course, you know, yeah, different standards apply to jokes than like to comments offered in a serious spirit. Yeah, I tell you what, let's just I'll post the link in chat, and yeah, I can't mirror this on my stream because of copyright, as you said earlier, Tia, but for anybody who wants to watch this, yeah, why don't we, because I'm kind of curious to see it now. Oh, this is cool. They're all dancing together. Oh, Blaze Cube says this is very anti-mobile watcher. Sorry, Blaze Cubes. It only has about 2 more minutes. If that helps at all. If you're still here to hear this. Very nice. That was cool. Yeah, I like how they had kind of the trio of them all singing together and dancing. And I think you're right, Tia, that it adds something different when, like, most 3D live concerts that you see for VTubers involve it's usually not mixed by gender in that way. And this was cool to see one that is. I think it really went well with the music and so on. So thanks for sharing that with us. But all right, chat, I think that for now, probably I will be heading out. Tomorrow, though, I will be streaming again. I was going to try to think of like some other way to end that sentence of like giving more detail, but my brain just kind of fried for a second and just said again. Oh, yes, I know. I'll be streaming Scarlet Hollow, episode 5. That's right. That will be tomorrow at either my usual streaming time at 7 or maybe 7:30. I think I have 7:30 listed on the schedule, but I might switch it to 7 because there was an appointment I had earlier that kind of got moved to a different time. So I think now I probably can just do my usual streaming time tomorrow. But that will be tomorrow for anybody who wants to watch that. And also, if you haven't seen the earlier streams or you just need a refresher, it will start with a recap. So that will be able to catch everyone up if you're worried about not being caught up on what's going on in the game and the visual novel. And then next week, of course, I'll be doing some further streaming. I haven't decided yet quite on what I'll be streaming next week, but rest assured there will be some content or other in some form next week. So did you hear User's high note at the end? Insane talent. Oh yeah, very much insane talent indeed. Yeah, glad to hear you all enjoyed the stream. So thanks everyone, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.